Hello, Marketecture listeners. We're sharing this special podcast episode as part of a partnership with the Rebooting, a publication focused on the mechanics of sustainable media businesses. In this week's episode of the Rebooting show, Brian Morrissey speaks with Marketecture founder Paparo about key trends in ad tech, Apple's crackdown on tracking technologies, and everyone's favorite topic of the moment, Elon Musk's shocking mismanagement during his first weeks of ownership of Twitter. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the Rebooting on Substack, or you can subscribe to their podcast directly wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for listening.
All right, I want to have you on to talk about like two main things, and they're both pressing to the future of humanity. One is what the hell is going on at Twitter, because it's everyone's favorite topic, and we just have to talk about it. And then we're going to talk about what the hell is going on with ad tech, and we're going to try to tie them together. First, like you're one of my, I think you're my favorite like ad tech related Twitter follow.
Okay, not much of a competition, but I'm doing my best there.
Well, that's like, I like joke, like I sometimes joke, probably not to you, but like you're the funniest person in ad tech, but it's not that much of a compliment.
Yeah, it's true. Oh, sometimes people like stop me on the street and be like, I love you on Twitter. And my wife is like, what the fuck just happened? Like, are you famous or something?
I could assure her, no, you are not.
I'm famous in a very small group that happens to live within a group.
But for those who do not know, walk down, because you have been like an ad tech aficionado going back to like the original, not the original, but the old school days. But back when it was just like, juiced up ad networks and whatnot.
Yeah, I started in ad tech in 2004, so I wasn't in the first wave, like the .com wave and the DoubleClick craziness. I started at DoubleClick in 2004 when it was already like past its prime. And
oh my God, DoubleClick was past its prime in 2004?
In 2004, DoubleClick was a incredibly poorly performing public company filled with people who didn't want to work there and customers who hated them. It was a really messed up company. And I was lucky enough to join right when they were taken private by a private equity firm.
Oh, yeah.
And then cleaned up and fixed. So I got lucky.
They were tarted up, and then they just got the timing totally right with Google.
Tarted up. They were tarted up really significantly. The DoubleClick went from being sold off the public markets for $300 million to being sold to Google less than 2 years later for $3 billion. Yeah. So 10x return in less than 2 years. That's quite a tarting.
And then a Quantive, it's still possibly one of the worst deals that like took place in this industry.
Quantive is competing with Elon Musk, I think, for the worst use of capital in the history of digital media. So I got lucky twice though in terms of how I got to where I am, or maybe three times. The first was I got in DoubleClick at the perfect time when it was ready to be fixed. Second was my job at DoubleClick was really interesting. I was kind of the product manager for miscellaneous. So whenever anyone had some crazy idea that was not a banner ad, they would come to me. So that was video, that was mobile, that was billboards, that was like anything. Like all the strange entrepreneurs called me and tried to get me to integrate with them. So that was a really fun. And I guess the third thing I got lucky on was that Business Insider, I became friends with Business Insider because I was like the only person at Google who would ever talk to them. Of course, I wouldn't use my name, but so they started writing articles that like name checked me in weird ways. Like, this is a low level guy at Google, you should know, and stuff like that.
What a compliment. You should put that on your LinkedIn.
And then one day they posted back when Business Insider was really popular.
This sounds like when Nick was still writing. Was this Nick?
It was
Carl's?
Nick. Yeah, it was Nick. And like one day they were like the 100 Twitter accounts you must follow if you're in advertising. And I was like ahead of Rupert Murdoch. I was like number 18 on their list of the 100 Twitter accounts you must follow. And I went from being like having 50 Twitter followers and tweeting about my lunch to suddenly being an influencer. And the rest is history.
That is back when like Twitter was like the original Twitter is the one that I miss, when it was about like tweeting about your lunch and just doing little one-liners. And like, I've never evolved on Twitter.
And I remember texting my tweets on my BlackBerry to like the phone number. That was how I started using Twitter.
So I haven't evolved at all. I'm tweeting the same thing I did like back then. And what I found is it's very niche. It's there's not a big market. I've capped out at the market. The number of people who will follow me on Twitter is finite. I found out.
How many followers do you have?
Like, I don't know, like 40, 41, 42,000 or something like this.
I don't
know how many are real.
Are you more of a TikTok guy?
No, I don't do TikTok. Twitter's the only social network I Well, I use Instagram a little bit, but
But aren't you like a media celebrity? I mean, I think this should be part of your portfolio. You're underperforming if you don't have a Twitter presence.
Well, let's talk about that because like I think Twitter's kind of silly, to be honest with you. And the fact that it is getting as much like attention as it is sort of amuses me to a degree. And because nobody at the end of the week, all right, nobody says, you know what? It was a good week. I got a lot done, if Elon Musk asks, but I really wish I spent more time on Twitter.
I agree with you. No, it's
like someone saying like, you know, it was a good night last night, but I wish I had more menthol cigarettes.
That's exactly what it's like. It's like you enjoy that sweet, minty pull of nicotine and you go one after another and you really do regret it the next day. But then the next evening, they're out again. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm totally addicted to Twitter and I hope Elon doesn't destroy my only joy in life.
You had this is the Twitter segment. So you had like a little tweet thread today. So you've evolved your Twitter use. There wasn't, I refuse to acknowledge tweet threads exist. And you're trying to unpack like, you know, I think the big question is, what the hell is this guy doing? I mean, he's like the most successful entrepreneur of a generation, multiple generations. I don't even know. And like, at least from the outside, from mere mortal, I'm not a billionaire. I don't know. I don't put rockets into space. It doesn't seem like he knows what the hell he's doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love situations like this. I love trying to understand people's psychology and maybe try to empathize a little bit with where they're coming from. And this is absolutely fascinating because it's the richest person on earth, like quite literally, someone who has made multiple companies hugely successful. And he's not just, you know, tripping a little bit. He's systematically mismanaging a situation to a degree that is, it seems like it must be on purpose almost. It's like performance art. It's Andy Kaufman as CEO. It's just extraordinary. And the really you have to ask the question why. You can't just sit there and just say, oh, he's just a bad manager, because that doesn't line up with the other pieces of information we have. Maybe he's a very aggressive manager. Okay, fine. But that doesn't explain why he tweets antagonistic things towards his advertisers. Maybe he's a right-wing, you know, incel. I don't know. Maybe. But like the entire
he has like 11 kids. Right,
he does, yeah. Incel is not the word I was looking for. What's the right word for like the right-wing simp? I don't know what term would be appropriate. A red pillar. It's a red pillar. That's what I was looking for, not an incel. So, yeah, there's like a lot of cross currents here that, you know, getting to the bottom of it is just absolutely fascinating because there's obviously something we don't know. There's some like, you know, abandoned, you know, sled in his attic that, you know, says tweet on it or something. Like there's something going on here that it is beyond the surface. You know, if you ask some people, and I put this in my tweet storm, like he's doing this for Saudi Arabia. That's the crazy people. They're like, you know, Saudi Arabia gave him the money so he could destroy Twitter so that he could bring, you know, right-wing petrol fascism to the West.
So wait, I voted in this. I voted in this poll, and I didn't get whatever the most popular answer was. But like, give us the options that you came down to about what the hell's going on.
So these are not really mutually exclusive, but let's just go through them fast. So option one is sort of Occam's razor, which is he's just bad at managing stuff. That is the easiest explanation for why he screwed this up so bad. Okay. Option two is what I call the producers. And that is this idea that he's intentionally running it into the ground, just like in the play and the movie, The Producers. But in this case, the reason he's doing it is because he wants to effectively force the debt holders to capitulate and to realize their debt's worthless, and then he buys it back for pennies on the dollar and thereby recapitalizes the company and gets out of the terrible situation. Option three is what I affectionately call Leroy Jenkins. Leroy Jenkins, if those of you who don't know, is a meme where, you know, people just throw all caution in the wind and jump into a fray against better wishes. And so this is the idea that maybe he is so like bitter about having to buy Twitter. You know, he lost in court. He's forced to buy it. He knows it's a bad idea that he's like, you know, F it. I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want and have some fun. The next one is what I call the conspiracy theory. So that's the one that either China or Saudi Arabia is forcing him to do this for some reason. I mean, this is like crazy pants, tinfoil, but like
Maybe I like this one.
It's a pretty good, like, he took money from Binance. He took money from the Saudi prince. He's doing this for no good reason. And he keeps talking about the elites and the leftists and that sort of thing that makes no sense. So maybe there is a political aspect to this somehow. I mean, I don't have any evidence of that, but, we don't have any evidence from doing anything in a rational way. So who knows? And then the last one, which I think is like the apologist one, is called what I call breaking eggs, which is that his approach to product management is to just go as fast as possible and just to absolutely not care about collateral damage. And he believes that by writing code and launching things, he'll get to where he wants to go. And it looks much worse in this environment than it might at Tesla, for example, because this is an existing social network where breaking eggs means, literal people and companies get damaged. And so somewhere in between those kind of 5 explanations for what's going on is the truth, I think. Or there might
what's your vote? First of all, what won? And then, but what did you vote for?
Well, the poll is still going on.
Oh my God. Ari, this is going up on Tuesday. It's fine. I don't want to like muddy the waters in your Twitter poll.
But. Okay. Well, basically the consensus is sort of the last one, breaking eggs, which is, and combined with sort of incompetence. Like he's a bad people manager. He's a bad manager in general. He's a brilliant person who's a bad manager. And his idea is he has a vision for this thing, which is much less advertising, much more payments, much more verification. And he's going to get there the hard way. And the hard way is going to hurt a lot of people and a lot of things. And it may also hurt him because he may lose all of his advertising dollars and not be able to complete his mission with the capital he has.
Yeah. What I'm like interested in, because you have experience of this, of like being sort of between the two worlds, is being between the tech world and the advertising industry. And these are like, that's not advertising, it's advertising industry. And they've always been sort of, to me, like very strange codependent relationship to some degree, because both sides like don't get each other. And that's why Silicon Valley, like I always felt like the tech industry, like didn't take ad tech seriously. Is this true? This is always my,
I think that
Silicon Valley people only care about app installs and stuff. Like that was the only thing that got them like, they're like, yeah, dealing with like a lunch and learn. Like, no.
Silicon Valley people, by that I mean kind of the engineering mindset.
I use it as shorthand.
It's shorthand, but it's accurate shorthand. They believe in sort of science and measurement and direct paths from A to B. And so when they think about how do I change an algorithm to increase the click-through rate of an ad, that makes a lot of sense to them. And they're pretty natural at that. And if you think about the success of Google and Facebook, incredible domination over the advertising business. If you think about a brand, about what does Coca-Cola mean to you, right? The red color, the script, the bottle, that's in your head, man.
Yeah.
That's, advertising works between your ears. And that's hard. They do not get that at all. And then the way that plays out, this is the example I always like to give when I'm in the context of product management, because I've been in ad tech and product management. I'll ask an engineer, like, if I had $1 million to spend to launch a new shoe for Nike, and you could launch it for, 900,000 instead of $1 million. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And every engineer, of course, will say, that's a good thing. I saved you $100,000. That's fantastic. And the answer is no. I was paid by Nike to spend $1 million. You under-delivered by 100,000. And that in a nutshell is the problem.
Okay. The advertisers are not coming back to Twitter, right?
No.
Because I think this is, to me, this is a thing like where I sort of go, maybe conspiracy like is the answer, because he's obviously a brilliant person, right?
Obviously.
And he's mishandled the like advertising to such a degree that it has to almost be like willful. Like I went through that entire whatever. I joked that it was like the biggest lunch and learn ever that he did with advertisers on Twitter Spaces. It was 111,000 people at the end, and like silent advertisers, because I'm like, who is going to like press this guy and get attacked by like every troll like known to humanity? Like no CMO is going to do that. not happening. But like the stuff he was talking about, he was like, yeah, I just go there and like shit post all the time. You should just try it. Just get in and like do it. Like, dude, have you ever talked to like a CMO? Like, no, Jim Stengel's not going to get on there and like start like shit posting like with meme lords and stuff. They're all like terrified of like getting fired because they're always fired.
Well, yeah, CMOs are always fired. Like that's a law of nature. That has nothing to do with Elon or not. I think
but it spoke to this like misunderstanding of like, if he didn't know that people were going to that advertisers, the advertising industry, it's not advertisers, the advertising industry was going to flee. That means that he didn't know what they truly value. Two, like he didn't understand at all the nature of the business and how risk averse these companies are.
Yeah, I think from what I've heard or seen, Elon doesn't understand advertising at all, even in a Silicon Valley frame. Like I don't believe he understands how Google and Facebook make money either, which is quite a fact if that's true. Because
he's all very reassuring to me.
Yeah, I mean, I would think this would have played out with like, hey, we're going to create the next AdWords, but for Twitter, and that would have been a naive thing to say, but reasonable. But in fact, he doesn't seem to understand the direct response market or the brand market. He doesn't seem to understand that something like 80% of Twitter revenue is brands, not direct response. And then to reinforce what your points was that he doesn't understand how risk averse brands are, how much the environment matters to them, how Twitter was always a marginal buy because it's smaller and more risky to begin with. And his top priority of effectively making it riskier by allowing more, quote, I'm putting in air quotes, free speech, which, bullshit phrase, but also, allowing people to be verified for $8, plus just mix it up and keep it exciting. Those are all good reasons to not advertise on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then you throw this into the environment of we're just entering a recession where people will be cutting back their ad budgets. And you could just imagine the conversation like, hey, we need to save 10%. What should we do? I don't know. Why don't we just turn off Twitter until we figure that thing out?
I mean, I have people who don't work in the advertising industry as friends. And I just got like text message in one of my groups, like with like the brand impersonations and stuff out there. Yeah. And like every brand is getting them. And like, if he doesn't get that, like he probably doesn't even know about the screenshot industrial complex and how like much of the ad industry has been ruled by it and stuff. Cause like, that's the part that I find interesting in that, like, maybe he didn't surround himself with the people who tell him like, no, Elon, this isn't how this works. Well, he seems like he fires the people who tell him that. Yeah.
I mean, okay, let's just go through let's go through 6 months prior to the acquisition. We have Twitter after several earnings releases in a row talks about how the revenue's delayed because they're building a new ad server. That's kind of a red flag to anyone in ad tech, like building a new ad server. That sounds hard and complicated. Then they sell MoPub, which was a division of Twitter that was really important in the mobile direct response world. They sold it for $1 billion. That's a nice amount of change. But if you expect Twitter to be a leader in direct response advertising, selling this really valuable, irreplaceable asset doesn't seem like the best move. Then the new CEO comes and fires most of the ad team, including the leader, Bruce Falk. This all happened before Elon entered the building. Now let's go over the last week of activities. 2 weeks. Elon shows up. Day one, posts fake news about Paul Pelosi's attempted assassination. Good move. Day 3, I think, he threatens to sue advertisers.
He didn't threaten to sue them. He threatened to like incite a mob against them.
No, he did. Yeah, you're right. I think day 3, he threatened a mob against people who refused to advertise. And then like day 5, he agreed with someone who threatened to sue them and with torturous interference.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
True.
And then by day 8, we have a deluge of fake verified people making fun of the very brands that would be advertisers in really painful ways, like accusing Chiquita of fomenting coups in Latin America and
not wrong.
I didn't say it was wrong. They were funny. Eli Lilly giving insulin away for free, which apparently hit their stock price today by a large amount of money. And this is also just as a footnote, all the auto manufacturers just pulled all their ads right away because they don't want to support Tesla. So one vertical category that represents, a pretty big piece of brand advertising is just off the table. So I must have missed a couple things, but that's a quick little history lesson.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I mean, but it is entertaining. I mean, when he said, like, are you not entertained? Like, I think we are all entertained.
I'm entertained.
Maybe too much. Let's pivot to talk about where ad tech is now, because you've been in the industry for a while, but then you're sort of out of it. But you'll get pulled back in.
So I sold my company.
Once you're in ad tech, you can't get out of ad tech.
No, some people have. I've seen some people get out of ad tech. You usually have to flee the country as well. They usually end up in Mexico.
Keep those blue blazers in your closet ready, because you're going to need them again.
Yeah. Every event comes up like Cannes and Mexico, and people are like, are you going? And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should go. But then I realize I have no reason. Not only would I have to pay for it myself, but also I would literally have nothing to do. It's really sad.
Fun. So no, you sold beeswax.
Sold beeswax.
Yeah. Explain to people what you were doing with beeswax and the X.
Yeah, sure. So we started beeswax in 2014. It was a DSP, more or less. We called it a bidder as a service, but it really was a DSP.
DSP, demand side platform.
Demand side platform.
That's the piece of Jay, our producer, is giving me the thumbs up because
no acronyms. Real
Jay,
talk.
You have no idea.
acronyms.
You have no idea where this shit is going to go next. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to be jumping in a lot.
All right. So you want to buy ads in a programmatic way, meaning using servers, not people. You're not buying martinis. You're like using computers. You have to use a product called a DSP, or demand side platform. The two leading ones are Google and a publicly traded company called The Trade Desk. I'm sure everyone's heard of The Trade Desk. We were a small company that focused on the most technical users. So we had APIs and a lot of customization, and we enabled folks who wanted to buy ads in very sort of advanced ways, kind of like the way a hedge fund buys stocks. They don't just log into Charles Schwab and buy some stocks. Okay. They have direct connections to the exchanges.
This gave them like an advantage because it's a bidding environment.
Basically.
It's like,
that's right. So we grew it very rapidly and had a very nice exit where we sold it to Comcast's Freewheel division in 2021, early 21. The company's doing really well inside of Comcast. I exited a year later in early 22. And now I've started a couple of things, most notably a company called Marketecture, or Marketecture.tv, which is in-depth interviews with executives and CEOs of ad tech and martech companies, sort of no nonsense, get to the facts, help you understand if they're vendors you want to work with or what they do and how it works.
And this, I love the Marketecture idea concept, because like I've been confused by ad tech for over a decade.
Yes. That's what it's for. I just keep asking. I get these executives on and they give me their usual bullshit spiel about like how they bring buyers and sellers together.
Now you know how I feel.
And I'm like, this is my show. You tell me what you really do. No, I do not understand what you just said. Break it down.
But like this has been like and I think the need for it has always been like, in some ways, the Achilles heel of the ad tech industry, right? Like we've been subjected to Terry Kawaja's like LumaScape slide for, when did he start it? It's probably been like a decade.
Yeah,
like
probably a decade. Yeah.
And anyone who hasn't seen it, it's this eye chart of, I don't know, he's got like multiple, like, but there's hundreds of logos on there. And the knock on ad tech was always, it was too complex. It was too confusing. There was too many middlemen. And then like Google, like basically just like scooped up each and a bunch of logos and just built their own thing. And then people were like, there's not enough competition. There's no innovation. It's like, well, which do you want?
Right. I think innovation requires some level of fragmentation. If you think about all the different ways that advertisers and their agencies can buy digital media across medium, like, TV, banner ads, mobile ads, et cetera, across creative types, video, text, imagery, across different optimization types, using different kinds of data, different geographies. It's a very complicated business, much more complicated and hopefully more efficient than traditional media like TV and broadcast and magazines. So I'm not scared of the complexity. I think it's a good talking point for those who want to, sell their lack of complexity. But the complexity, it's not a problem in and of itself.
Yeah. But so with Marketecture, the idea is anyone who is on the buy or the sell side, is an advertiser or a publisher, has an extensive tech stack. And just being able to run ads, count the ads, put the ads in front of theoretically the right person at the right time and stuff like this requires an inordinate number of partners. I mean, I know this having done many events in this industry.
Yeah, it does to do it right. I mean, the market actually segments pretty clearly into large and small. So if you're a small publisher, you may get by entirely with the Google stack on the sell side. You just put some tags up and make money. If you're a small advertiser, you might get away with Google plus Facebook. But as soon as you become large and you become Estee Lauder or General Motors, or even large Peloton, I know they're not doing that well, but they do a lot of advertising. You suddenly have a lot of complex requirements around data collection, privacy, optimization, creative, geographies, multiple agencies. The mix of brand and direct response, all these things create complexity. And whatever you can think of, there's probably a vendor for you, right?
Right. And so the idea behind Marketecture is that when you have to figure out the vendors that you're going to use, first of all, this is my own outside opinion. Everyone sounds the same. They just sound the same.
They do.
They're just, the words are just mixed up. It reminds me of a Mexican restaurant where you're the chimichanga is actually just the enchilada, and the enchilada is really just the burrito. And so you really have to dig in to understand the differentiation. And tell me if I'm wrong on this one. A lot of the people who are digging in to understand the differentiation are what is euphemistically called non-technical.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. The idea behind Marketecture is to replace your first meeting. So if you're interested in, say, a creative solution, so you want a software product that lets your designers create a lot of banner ads really quickly, and that's very valuable, right? You go to the websites, you find 6 or 7 vendors, and they all sound exactly the same, and you really just cannot tell. So you have to have a meeting with all of them, and then your meeting has 5 people in it times 6 vendors, and suddenly you spent $10,000 before you even really figured out what you're even trying to do. Having myself, who's admittedly an expert, grill the CEO for half an hour on video about what they actually do, you do not need that first meeting. You could immediately eliminate that vendor and say, no, they're not right for us, or they sound great. Let's get them in right away. That's the idea. You're not going to be able to watch my video and immediately choose a vendor or solve your business problem, but we're going to save you a lot of time and money.
So give me the case for why ad tech is interesting right now. I haven't been paying attention. I've been living in Miami for a couple of years. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting in ad tech. How about that? So there's really 3 things that are interesting. And there's more than 3, but 3
you can just say no, and then we'll just end the podcast.
I think for ordinary people, ad tech should be a little interesting, and they should pay a little more attention than they do. For the average consumer who is not in our business, it's pretty interesting that Apple just 3 years ago went up on stage. They showed a picture of a bicycle, and they said, or Tim Cook said, doesn't it bother you when that bicycle is following around the web and it's so creepy? There's this bicycle, and wouldn't you rather it didn't happen? Well, we're introducing privacy. And that sounded great.
We came up with a new solution. This is like a Saturday Night Live commercial.
It's
called privacy.
I'm not very far off from what actually happened. And everyone claps. It goes, that sounds great. Apple's our friend. And then, round numbers, I would say, $1 trillion of value disappeared from the public markets. People went out of business. Peloton practically went out of business. People can't sell, sheets and pillows online anymore.
So wait,
Facebook fired 10,000 people.
Yeah. So explain, because this is what I was sort of getting at, why it is kind of an interesting time. That was what I was hoping we would get to. Otherwise, we would just finish this thing. Is what specifically did Apple do with both IDFA and then this thing called ATT?
Yeah, so let's put it in perspective. So the iPhone was introduced, I guess, now 11 years ago. A new medium, whenever there's a new medium, advertisers find that. And some mediums are less attractive to advertisers, and some are more attractive to advertisers. So in the history of the mobile phones before the iPhone, it was a very unattractive business. There were very few ads on BlackBerries and flip phones. Very few. There were some, but there were very. So the iPhone was introduced. It became incredibly popular, as we all know. And it had a feature in it which allowed app developers and marketers and different people to anonymously identify the users who were looking at the apps. It was called an IDFA. It was called something else at the time. They changed the name, but that's too much detail. So this anonymous identifier.
You're at the right altitude.
Yeah. The anonymous identifier was amazing. Like, it was incredible for everyone in the ecosystem because it allowed you to optimize what ads were shown to that user based on their behavior. But
it was a hack. It was like the third-party cookie was a hack. Is this another hack?
It was not a hack. No,
it was not a hack.
No.
It was made for this.
Well, yes, it was the IDFA stands for Identifier for Advertising.
Okay.
It was not a hack.
Like Beto O'Rourke. Remember when he like declared for president? He was like, I'm made for this.
And like Beto, it had a limited shelf life. So the IDFA was magical, and it actually solved the hack that was the case in the browser. In the web browser, we had the hack, which was cookies, which were not meant for advertising, but were glommed on by everyone, and they disappear, and they don't follow you around, and they're not very reliable. The IDFA was magical and worked great. And as a result, a very robust advertising and marketing ecosystem developed in mobile, highlighted by Facebook and Instagram. I'd like to say that while Google Search is the world's greatest advertising product ever created, Instagram is the world's greatest brand advertising ever created. You know, basically you could show handbags and shoes, and it's really direct response-ish, but still. Anyway, the point being, you could say if Apple had never put the IDFA there in the first place, it would have played out very differently, and the whole ecosystem around advertising in apps and app economics would have been different. But it was there for many years. And Apple decided, for some good reasons, to make it so that identifier was only opt-in. So it was not shared with all these parties by default. The user had to be shown a prompt called the ATT, which is, I forget what it stands for. App Tracking Transparency. That's what it stands for. Yeah. ATT. And so when you'd open an app, and probably most of the listeners here are aware of this, you would sometimes see this interesting dialogue that said, would you like to allow this app to track you around the web, or whatever the language is? A really scary language.
Yes.
Scary. Yes, right.
Please.
Really scary language. And, you know, obviously a minority of people will say yes when prompted like that. And Apple went even further by saying, not only do you have to use the scary prompt, you are not allowed to give people any incentive to say yes. And if they say no, you can't track them by any other method. Yeah. They have to be dead to you. And
not to be a conspiracy theorist here, but it does. I think I should point out that Apple also did not have an advertising business really, and they sold phones, so they didn't give a shit about like kneecapping anyone.
Oh, absolutely.
They tried advertising once with iAd, and it was a disaster.
Okay, well, there's some nuance to that, but yeah, I don't think you need to be a conspiracy theorist to say that they were clearly, they saw that their two rivals, their number one rivals, Google, and Google obviously has enormous advertising exposure, and their number one kind of pain in the ass, I wouldn't call them a rival, is Meta, Facebook. I mean, I think there's no love lost between those companies. So hitting them in the kneecaps was kind of fun for Tim.
Well, I mean, Tim Cook was, I mean, I think going back to Steve Jobs, it was just like, your business model sucks. I mean, there was very, very upfront with having zero respect for how Facebook decided to.
Absolutely. And as for Apple iAds, you know, the original launch of iAd under Steve Jobs was very video and TV oriented and didn't do very well, as you said. But it didn't go away, and they've been slowly creeping back, and they've built actually a very substantial business of search ads on the App Store. Oh, yeah. Similar to Google ads, where basically
that's the advertising. That's what I think. When Silicon Valley thinks about advertising, they think about like that because it's like a toll booth, and they're like, I love this. This is a revenue spigot. I can turn on the revenue spigot.
Yeah, I mean, go into the App Store and search for Uber, and I bet you'll see a Lyft ad. And search for Lyft, you'll see an Uber ad. It's great.
Do you remember when there was the controversy of like whether Google would like sell like keywords based on like tramarks and stuff? Yeah. And then like they ran the numbers, and they're like, sue us.
Yeah, they got sued. They got sued by a lot of people. I think they won those lawsuits. I mean, it's clearly they're still doing it. You know, branded keywords was what the controversy was over. Yeah.
Brooks Brothers was pissed about it. Maybe that's what happened to Brooks Brothers. Maybe it wasn't the boxy suits going out of fashion.
Are they out of business, Brooks Brothers?
I don't know. They should be.
All right.
Who's wearing a suit?
I guess they're not going to be sponsoring the rebooting anytime soon. I mean,
I'm not toadying up to Brooks Brothers together.
I'm just saying, your audience probably has like 100% Blue Blazer penetration.
Okay. All right, let's get back to Apple.
Okay.
And ad tech.
Yeah. So the other shoe that dropped, and this goes into the conspiracy theory bucket, is that very clearly Apple has been increasing their investment in advertising corresponding to the rollout of ATT. So Apple collects a lot of information.
I'm sure.
Yes, I know. Apple collects a lot of information about what you do on your phone, and it has a different preference doesn't have the scary language. Apple has this language that's like, would you like to help Apple to make your phone better with ads? And they claim that it's all kosher because instead of passing your data around to these anonymous evil ad tech companies, they keep it for themselves. And they keep it on your phone. So that's really the distinction. They say if they profile you and show you those creepy ads, but the data's on your phone, then that's cool. Nothing to be worried about. Not a privacy issue. But if the creepy ads are coming from outside your phone, you're basically one step away from 1984.
Okay. So it's like the ad call is coming from within the phone.
Exactly.
Okay. And this has had a tremendous impact on a particular sector, really, of the advertising industry, because it's like you have this strange situation where the ad holding companies are reporting great results. They're raising their forecasts and stuff. And then you have Snap, which is like their stock is down like 85%.
Right.
Meta just like laid off 11,000 people. Like it seems like it's really impacted a particular form of targeted advertising.
Yeah. I mean, app advertising is really what's been hit the worst. The browser has had problems with cookies and identity for quite some time, but it's been kind of a slow burn. The Apple ATT impact has come on very strong over the past 12 months, hitting companies that advertise in their apps on a direct response basis. That combination is what got killed. What's fascinating about advertising, I'd love to see a study on this, but I just know it anecdotally, is that there's almost two totally separate ecosystems that don't talk. It's like red state and blue state America. And that is like what I call ad tech, what you call ad tech is one ecosystem. And then mobile is totally different. They're different people, different companies. They don't talk to each other. Agencies.
And they're massive. And they're in Silicon Valley. They're Silicon Valley. The app download people it seems like they're in a different world.
Yeah, they are. They're different advertisers, different technology companies, different measurement companies. And that's one of the things that is also interesting, which is if you look at a mainstream ad tech company, I'll just call a name, like The Trade Desk. You're one of the biggest. They really don't do much app installs. It's just not part of what people use them for. If you go to a big holding company like Publicis, probably not a lot of app installs going on there. Probably if you're a Publicis Fortune 500 customer and you need your app to get installed, you probably are calling up AppLovin or someone like that to do it for you. Yeah. Maybe your agency's evolved tangentially, but they don't have the skills to make it happen.
Exactly. I am running out of power here, but we're going to we can cut that part out. So how are we going to bring this home? Let me think for a second. All right. So we're entering in this new period where targeting is going to be harder, right? What's going on in the browser with, Google is going to eventually deprecate this third-party cookie. It's going away at some point, right? The Apple stuff's happening over there. What seems very clear is that the era of easy, cheap targeting is sort of coming to an end. So what I talk about how it seems like we're in this period where a lot of eras are ending, but we're just unsure about what follows.
Yeah, just like democracy, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Sorry to get all political on the ad tech talk. It's definitely true that consumers are going to be less identifiable on their digital devices because of legislative and privacy changes. That's a fact, right? So then you have to ladder that up to what is the impact on, advertising and on business. And what is interesting is that while it may be impossible, let's say, for an advertiser to target the same consumers on a one-to-one basis across channels, that may just not be possible anymore. It is possible for publishers to do it. So a large-scale publisher who has a login wall or a reg wall knows who those consumers are at a one-to-one basis. And so does most CTV, connected TV apps have logins. They know who the users are. The cable companies and the phone companies know who the consumers are, right? So we haven't had a wholesale removal of identity. It's not an anonymous web anymore. It's just the power is shifting. And the technology is shifting. So on the power, probably this should be good for scaled publishers in some way, in that an advertiser over the last 10 years, advertisers have sort of seen publisher relations as an optional part of the business where they could just log into their favorite DSP, the same acronym of choice, and get access to those consumers wherever they might be looking at content, which was bad for publishers.
As see a cookie, hit a cookie.
Yeah. Or,
by a publisher ad salesperson.
I've also heard of it as, digging for oil on other people's land.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my mom always told me, like, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?
Sure. The difference is that in this case, just to use that metaphor, like the advertiser is getting the milk. The farmer doesn't even know where the cow is.
Okay.
Right. So we're moving to a world where the farmer knows where the cow is and the advertiser doesn't know anything. There's a fence. The advertiser isn't even allowed in to look. Yeah. So that's maybe good news for scaled publishers that they can recapture some of that.
Okay. And bad news for the long tail, because the long tail, it's always bad news for them because they don't have sales forces. They don't have a lot of first party data, and they're always like dependent on these kind of automated solutions. For
it's bad news in two ways. First of all, it's bad news in that the results have gotten worse. And that's why we've seen the implosion of D2C companies. The D2C companies can no longer attract customers at affordable ROI. So some of them have gone out of business or had to sell because they literally just can't find the customers. And secondly,
that's why you look at Shopify's like stock price. Like I made a mistake during the pandemic of buying Shopify stock. And the flaw of Shopify was the fact that they outsourced acquisition to cheap ads on Instagram. Right. And then like those cheap ads on Instagram became a lot more expensive and a lot less effective. And the DTC companies could only exist in a world of cheap ads, it seemed.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was a magical time. I use the word magical a lot, but it was like the Instagram ads just worked so well that can you imagine? The ads worked so well. They created thousands of businesses. Based solely on attracting customers from Instagram.
You tell these stories to your kids at night. It was a magical time, kids.
You'd be surprised at the sort of conversation. Right. And the second way this is bad for long tail is that they become more dependent on Google and Facebook. Like they're already very dependent on them. But when they can, in a world with less data and less ability to differentiate, they become even more dependent on whoever can. And, Google and Facebook are kind of the one-eyed men in this situation where like everyone's blind, but they have the scale and the ML models and everything to make sense out of the anonymous sort of world.
Yeah. So final thing, and then we're going to go is, and this may be fraught because you were an employee there. Give me the case for, and then the case against forcing Google to relinquish its ad tech assets.
Yeah, sure. The case for, and this, I don't think this is what you're asking, but I'll answer it this way. Why should Google want to?
I'm used to this though also too, Ari.
Why should Google want to spin out? Google should want to spin out the ad tech assets. Their network business, they divide their business into search, YouTube, network, and everything else. Network is declining faster than the other groups. So revenue was down over the last 12 months. It is lower margin than the other groups, and it's the source of virtually all their antitrust and privacy problems. They should happily spin it out and focus on the other parts of their business, which are amazing and are growing well. I mean, YouTube had a tough quarter, but could use a lot more attention. That's why Google should want to. Why the government should want them to and everyone else? Well, it is very big and by combining it with their other businesses like Android and YouTube and search, there are inefficiencies in the market and more money is being taken out of advertisers' hands in a way that theoretically shouldn't happen if it was an independent company. The con is that it actually is more efficient to have it as part of YouTube and the rest of the search, and advertisers would have worse ROI if it was an independent company.
Yeah. I mean, this is always like the push and pull. Like people want the innovation, but they want the efficiency at the end of the day. And like they want like to have competition in the ecosystem, but they want it to be super easy. And it's like, well, which do you want? Like you don't get everything. Right. So also the final thing on this is I find the Trade Desk a very interesting company. I'm not trying to sell ads to the Trade Desk, but call me if you want.
I'm sure they would.
Is what, and only because like they've been able to compete. Like I would always like have meetings over the years with different people that were doing different things in the digital ad ecosystem. And my first question was always like, wait, why won't Google crush? And it was just a stock question. But Trade Desk has like been able to like compete on like a big scale. What did they get right?
It kept it simple and executed, right? They just did what their customers wanted, produced plain vanilla innovation after plain vanilla innovation. And by that, I mean
endorsement.
No, I mean, that's what people want. They want the products that work and get better every quarter. And that's what they gave them. And I use the word innovation. Like they weren't building boring, bad stuff. They were building interesting stuff. It just wasn't mind blowing. It's not like it's not a nuclear reactor. And, I was in a similar business at Beeswax when I was running it. And we also had a lot of success by just being very focused on product, making it better every quarter, treating our customers well. And the result is, a fast growing, highly profitable business with very loyal customers. So good for them.
Yeah. All right. We're going to leave it there because my battery is running out. Thank you so much for this little walk through the wilds of the ad tech world. And everyone, when you're going to get smart about ad tech, check out marketecture.tv and get smarter.
Right. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.